Yeah. Good evening and welcome, everyone. It is 5:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. This is our February regular board business meeting. Thank you all for joining us on this beautiful early spring day. Before we get started, I wanted to share a few thoughts and reminders. We want our boardroom to be a welcoming, safe space for all and any of our community's members and guests. As this is a business meeting, we do expect those in attendance to conduct themselves in a respectful way. We would ask that you do not interrupt the meeting, and if there is an immediate need that you have, such as an audio concern or question, please move to the back and let one of our staff members know. As a reminder, there is a designated space for any video recording and/or media. We will now get started with our regular business meeting and items on our agenda. We're going to go ahead and get started with roll call. Director Zavala? Here. Director Smith? Here. Director Barrows? Here. And I am here. Director Decker, are you with us?
I am.
Director Decker is under the weather, but she is joining us via Zoom. Thank you. Next on our agenda is our superintendent report. So I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Snell.
Thank you, Director Barrows. Excuse me, Director Sproul. We're going to get started with the staff advisory report. So we have two staff advisory members, Kara Hecker and Nate Young, here today. So I'll invite them to the podium and give an update on the work that's been done.
Hey, Dr. Snell, school board members, community members, and guests. My name is Kara Hecker. I'm a school counselor at Hudson's Bay High School, and I have the privilege to serve as one of the co-chairs on our staff advisory. I'm joined here by Nate Young. He is a behavior specialist at Harney Elementary and a member of our staff advisory. And we're honored to be here to share a little bit on behalf of the work that we are doing at our advisory. At the November school board meeting, April Whipple and Jessica came and talked a little bit about how the staff advisory was formed and gave a little bit of information on that. We're here to do a little recap since then. At our November staff advisory, we focused on the recap of our purpose and of kind of looking at what our focus was, and came to three themes that emerged: wellness, advisory, so bringing concerns, things such as SBLT or labor management, or being more of a clearinghouse type of committee. And while discussing this purpose, we explored how to address future topics, completed a quick survey to see what were the hot topics that we were seeing needed to be focused on with the advisory. And with that, I'm gonna let Nate talk a little bit about what's come up within the last 2 months of advisory meetings.
Thanks, Kara. So since your last report, we have had two more staff advisory committee meetings, one on November 29th and one on January 24th. In November, we began our meeting with a presentation from Brett Blechschmidt regarding the budget outlook for the next school year. We talked about some of the many reasons that we should expect a budget cut for next school year. The group, the staff advisory committee, advised Dr. Snell that regardless of what happens going forward, it's critical to be transparent about what's coming and how difficult decisions are being made, how those choices are being made. We spent the remainder of our time in November discussing staff wellness after the previous month's presentation by the Kaiser Foundation. Jeff Fish led our discussion that began with stating the obvious, that our staff are tired and in need of further support in the district. From there, Mr. Fish, led a discussion on what our next steps for the staff wellness might look like. We talked about stress management, which has been a top priority identified by staff, and we spent some time looking at some possible resources and options. We talked about the Healthy Generation and Kaiser Foundation grant possibility. We talked about creating a secondary traumatic stress page that's available to staff on our Vern internal website. We talked about using Smart Health, which is a voluntary wellness program that supports living well. These all will be explored further in future meetings. Then in January, as with most staff advisory meetings, we began with a moment of connection in which April Smith handed each of us a bright spot, which is a little button, and encouraged us gave us a little bit of time, encouraged us to think about someone at school that makes our job worth doing. Who do we think about when we get up in the morning and we're excited to go to school? It's always nice to be reminded about why we choose to come back every day. And it certainly doesn't hurt to say thanks to those around us that makes our jobs better. And so we were encouraged to give those bright spot buttons to the student or other staff member that brings us a bright spot every morning, every day. Switching gears, we return to this discussion of the 24-25 budget. Dr. Snell and Mr. Bleckschmidt reviewed budget information with us and took us through some guided activities to further understand where VPS stands. We discussed three major issues that are leading to a budget shortfall next year. We talked about the declining enrollment. Our district has lost 8% of the student body compared to 6 years ago. We talked about the end of pandemic relief funds that came from the federal government's ESSER funds, the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds. And we talked about the rising cost of labor across all skill levels. In an eye-opening exercise, we were given a simplified budget spreadsheet and allowed to manipulate certain budget items to try to meet the likely budget shortfall. The questions we were asked to consider were, how does our budget reflect what we value the most in supporting our students? Where is there flexibility in the budget? And how do we move forward? We decided that, as I said, no matter what, transparency and staff input will be critical going forward into the hard times that may be coming.
Our next meeting is coming up February 28th, and we're going to continue discussing the budget. The other thing that came up from when we did a poll, figuring out what were some topics that we wanted to focus on, was student behavior. And so some of the things that we will be looking into with that is what things are not working, what things are working, and digging into like, okay, so now what? What are we going to do to like make things improve, to like face the challenge, to look at what challenges that we're facing and see what we can do better. We also are going to be increasing our meetings from 1.5 hours to 2 hours based on some feedback from the people in the staff advisory who have said that we just are feeling we need more time to be able to discuss. And so that's going to be the next steps of focus, and you'll hear more about that next time that we are presenting about that. I'm gonna let Nate share a little bit about why he became a member on the staff advisory.
For me, given the opportunity a little over a year ago, I was eager to make connections with other people in our school district. I know what I worry about on a daily basis at the elementary school level, but I was curious about what bus drivers and paras and counselors, like high school counselors, are thrilled by and are struggling with. I'm also excited to play a part in the direction of our school district. I think that I feel it's important to take every opportunity to be a part of the school district and leading, and this is a small part I can play. And finally, I really appreciate hearing the perspectives of other members in our district outside of my small elementary school bubble.
And then one of my big reasons for joining the staff advisory is I am very much VPS born and bred. I have two parents who were excellent teachers in the VPS school district, or in VPS. And I went through kindergarten through 12th grade VPS. I've worked in VPS since 2004, and I have a 2022 graduate from VPS that was K through 12. So I put a lot of time into VPS throughout my life, and I want to continue that. And so I'm someone that if I want to see progress happen, I want to be part of that progress if I'm going to continue that process. Also, like as Nate mentioned, getting to see perspectives from different staff throughout our district is wonderful, to be able to hear what's happening with somebody that's at a bus driver, or somebody that's working in the cafeteria, somebody that's working certified, classified. We have everything there. And it's really nice to be able to gather and commune as one to be able to figure out some problem solving. Also, of course, working with Dr. Snell and April Whipple, like co-chairing together, has been amazing. And I joined as the co-chair about January-ish of last year and felt very welcomed. And it's really nice to be able to team up with them, come up with a plan for what our meetings are going to be. And just has been a wonderful, nice process that hopefully we get to continue and serve this district. We appreciate the opportunity to share and just wonder if there's any questions you have for us. Yes.
Yeah, we appreciate the update. So before I get into the next topics, we have started a new tradition where we record some of our musical ensembles playing the national anthem. And so today's national anthem is courtesy of Jason Lee Middle School. And then we end meetings. I know that not everybody stays for the entire meeting, but at the end of the meeting, if you want to watch the recording, the ensemble also plays another selection. And so that will be the wrap up tonight. So I'll stop Sharon and Jefferson. If everybody who's able and willing can rise, we will have our national anthem from Jason Lee Middle School. All right, this evening I have a little bit more content than usual, so I apologize. I'll try to be as efficient as I can. The first update is actually an opportunity for you as directors to share. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, we attended the legislative conference that's put on jointly by the School Board Association and the School Administrators Association. That took place up in Olympia. They talked about some different priorities moving forward, updating staffing allocation, special education, looking at school facilities across the state. And then a part of the budget that they call MSOCs, which is the non-staff related costs of budgets. We heard from a number of legislators. We heard from Superintendent Rakedahl. I'll just pause and see if there's any comments that the board directors would like to make about this year's legislative conference or the legislative session.
Yes, I currently serve on the legislative committee. So I'm one of 2 representatives that represent our area, so our districted area, which is a new, and I'm learning lots. And so it was really, I had to be there early that day for the conference, and it was just a lot of really great information on kind of what our priorities are as school directors and kind of how much weight we have, and giving our thoughts and perspectives to our legislators. We got to, I think, Representative Berg and Lieutenant Denny Heck came to speak to us on Day of the Hill. So it was really exciting. And if anything, what I took away from it was I got to see our legislators in action. And, Representatives Monica Sonier. And so I came away really grateful, and just being, I think, we learn so much about our history, but it's not until you see it in action and actually part of it and know that we as school directors, play a little part. But it was a very, just humbling experience, and I really enjoyed learning about, I got to learn alongside some first graders about the House of Representatives. So it was a really fun. I was like, oh, this is really true information. And so I think just something that's coming up. I know it's a little bit off script, but we as part of WASDA, we're going to be putting in our priorities for the next year. And so either we kind of vote in pro or con in a lot of the positions that WASDA is bringing forward. And so I know that the opening is coming up next month. So that's something that I think we're going to be discussing sometime soon.
I also had the opportunity to attend just the conference portion, not the day on the Hill. And I think the power of the collective voice was really came through just school directors from all across the state. So the challenges we're facing here, unfortunately, are happening in boardrooms all across the state. So leveraging just the network and the consensus that we have. So having legislative priorities as school directors and superintendents. This is a short legislative session. We don't anticipate big changes, but there are small asks that are being made that we're hoping will positively impact our budget. But I think that allowed conversation, not just there's this year, the short-term ask, but also what are the long-term, what's that long-term vision? And it was pretty loud and clear that it's updating that prototypical school model, just to be a little bit more relevant to the realities that we were facing. So I learned a lot. It was a quick 3-4 hours. But did you want to?
I think one of the things that stuck out to me, we were talking about the staffing allocations, and when we talk about like the prototypical school model and funding, those are ratios that we have, and I've often heard it talked about in terms of we need to fully fund those, but what they pointed out was those are funded, we need to update the ratios. And I think that was kind of a takeaway for me, is that it's out of date. And so we really need to look at updating those ratios for what our student needs currently are. And then the other topic that I obviously get really interested in are the legislative priorities and updates around special education. And so the big one that we are talking about, well, there's quite a few big ones, but one of the ones is looking at the cap on special ed funding. And so, if we are funded, if the cap is like 15%, and as a district we have more than that, we only get funding for 15% of our students. And so there's talk about raising the cap and also eliminating the cap, so that basically any student who has an IEP, we get funded for that. And so there's kind of some different options that are being talked about in this legislative session for that. So be curious to see what happens.
Director Decker, since you're on Zoom, I'm not sure if you had anything to add.
It was the first time I had experienced the legislative conference. And so I was kind of taking it all in, and just having the opportunity to hear people speak about what's important across the state, and recognizing that our struggles are also other school district struggles. And again, as I think you said, Director Sproul, was that the collective voice can be incredibly powerful. And we just have to make sure that we use it, and that we're not just us, but also our community, that we're always, advocating for what our students need. And it just reminded me that I can't leave it to just when the legislature goes into session, but when they're out of session too, continuing building those relationships and talking about what our students need. That's it.
Thank you.
Well, that leads into a budget update. These have been a regular part of the superintendent's report. And the information that I'm sharing this evening also was shared out to our staff and our community last week, and is posted on our website. So you heard from our staff advisory some of the activities that we've been doing and some of the input that they've given us about being transparent with the decision-making process and how do we have a budget that reflects what we value in our community. This is a decision-making framework that's put together based on our equity policy. And I'll walk through our process using this framework as a guide. And then the graphic there next to it is a reflection of our strategic planning process and the input that we received from our community through that. And so we're trying to carry those with us as we make these important and difficult decisions. And that guiding question of how does our budget reflect what we value most? Our budget is about 85% staff. And so we recognize that the work that we do is dependent on the great staff that we have. And so that's a benefit of our budget. It's also a challenge when you're in a reduction cycle because you don't have other places in the budget to really go when most of your budget is staff. So in the exploration part, just wanted to give some context about why are we in this situation now. And I have a few graphs, and I recognize that when you're standing in the back, it's hard to get all those. So this is recorded, and you have access to it through the documents on the website too. But really, there's a couple of many gaps that we're experiencing between state funding and what it actually costs to run the school district. And I'll start with the cost per staff member. And then the number of staff members. And then we're also recognizing our insurance and utility costs continue to increase like they have for everybody else in our community. And the funding hasn't kept up with that. Director Barros mentioned the special education costs and are tuning into the legislature if they're going to move towards fully funding those. We have a gap of about 12 million from what it cost last year to run those programs. Our substitute costs aren't funded from the state level, so there's a gap there as well. And then our transportation costs, there's a gap. All those gaps need to be filled in order to make the district run every day. And while we see that, we have also experienced increased student need in our community, increased need in general in our community. And so that is a consistent theme of feedback that we receive from our staff is that they need more support, not less support. So that particularly challenges the process as well. It was also mentioned in the staff advisory update that our enrollment had some significant decline in a few years, 2018, 19, 20. And then we've been kind of treading water since, but overall we're about 8% lower than we were back in 2018. So that's a challenge as well. And as was already mentioned, this is something that many districts are experiencing. Our graphs will show why about that. This is just a chart that shows the blue line is the percent of basic ed staffing that's funded by the state. And so you can see that we've been, anywhere from 84% of our funding was funded by the state back in 17, 18, kind of just stayed the same. And now we're seeing that drop. And so for this year, about 81% of our staff is funded from the state. So that means that the other 19, 20% is all funded locally or through grants. And then the other line there is the basic ed staff salaries and benefits. And so you can see that back in 17, 18, 65% of those salaries and benefits were funded from the state. And then the McCleary decision happened, which was a pretty paramount decision around funding in public education. And the state increased the allocation for staff cost. And then we've been losing ground and we're back to where we started. And so those are pretty significant, and those mirror what's happening at the state level with just patterns of funding. And so this is inflation adjusted for K-12 spending and the percentage of the budget of the overall state budget that's in place. And you can see that similar line of a hump where we hit a high point and then we're starting to regress. And so currently, about 43% of our state's budget is going to K-12 funding, compared to that high point of 52.4. And this is why it's not just a Vancouver Public Schools challenge, it's a challenge across all districts in our state. So why are we in this situation now? Why weren't we in it last year, the year before? There's a number of factors that have played, I guess, advantageous for us in Vancouver. As one, our board, you authorize the use of fund balance to reserve and maintain those staffing levels. And then we also benefited, I think staff advisory mentioned this as well, from the federal relief dollars. And so we were able to fill those gaps over the time that those funds were available for us. And now those funds are no longer available. Our fund balance is no longer available as a tool. So that's why we're at this point this year where we have to reconcile some of our budget, our expenditures versus revenues to have a path forward. We have benefited greatly from a local levy that's been in place as well. And thank you. This is the anniversary of our passing that levy last year. There's several local levies in our community up tonight. So I just encourage everybody to vote, make sure that they vote. I'm guessing most of you are Vancouver residents, but we just want to make sure our community votes on any election. But that also stabilized us, whereas other districts that had levy failures would have a double levy failure. Then I guess it's increased the pace of these challenges on the budget front. So I talked with you all as a board when we started this journey, which basically began when we approved last year's budget. When we approved the current year's budget last year. And you talked about increasing transparency to make sure that we try to provide information to our public in clear, digestible chunks. It's a really, we're talking about nearly $500 million budget. We're one of the largest organizations in the county with over 3,000 employees. So it's a very complex thing. How do we break that down into chunks so people can provide meaningful feedback to us? That was something that you wanted us to do. You also talked about the input that we received from the community through the equity policy process and the strategic plan process. And so to keep that in mind. And then we wanted to make sure that there were many opportunities for people to engage. And then ultimately we wanted to be able to adopt a budget that allows us a path forward. And that you also want us to settle contracts that create fair agreements between our labor partners moving forward. So when we think about this decision-making process, we talked a little about the exploration as to why we're here and why we're here now. The next level of this is like who's making the decision. So again, I apologize to people standing in the back, but this is just a decision matrix for who's responsible, who's accountable, who should be consulted, and who should be informed about these types of decisions. And the school board is the top left, and that first little quadrant there, cell underneath responsible, is three major decisions that the board needs to consider at this part of our budget adoption process. The first happened back in December when, based on the analysis of the budget where enrollment came in, the board set a reduction target for the next budget year, and that target was set for 8 to 10%. The second decision point is tonight, and based on the information that we've shared with you, you have a resolution on the agenda that is for your consideration, and that resolution really tasks me with developing a reduction plan. And then the next decision point would be in March when I would need to bring that plan forward to you for your consideration. Now, my responsibility isn't to develop that plan in isolation, but to do outreach and consult all of our community partners, our families, our staff, our students the best way that I can to develop a roadmap to the 8 to 10% reduction. And then once that plan, if it is adopted, then it would be my responsibility, our school leaders, our program leaders, and our labor leaders to implement that plan based on our collective bargaining agreements. So there's a lot there, but ultimately, as an elected school board, one of your primary duties is to adopt a budget each year. Very similar to our legislators that we talked about in Olympia and their adoption of a state budget. So how do we make 8 to 10% in reductions? Basically, as I mentioned previously, most of our budget is staff, and we do have some non-staffing costs, and so our job is to remove basically 8 to 10% of that from the expenditure side. So we did some survey and outreach. We've been engaging our advisories. These are the people that have weighed in as of 4 p.m. When I last updated this, you can see the breakdown of who's weighing in. I'm guessing that people have multiple roles in the district as well. They're both staff members and family members and community members as well. And some of the themes from the community input from those 2,000 people that took the survey, or nearly, there was about 800 also just qualitative thoughts shared. And so we reviewed all those thoughts, used AI several times to do some analysis and then check. It's a pretty powerful thing these days. In the past, you'd have to do a lot of coding to figure out themes from this. And so we're able to draw some things out pretty quickly for you, which is helpful, I think, as you have these important decisions. And some of those themes are to look at reduction in administrative costs is a theme, and focus on students and programs and the opportunities that they have moving forward. Just looking at how we're allocating the budget currently, trying to determine what are non-essential items and really try to prioritize student learning. To think about just the program and curriculum and the impact to the student experience, and really thinking about what happens as a result of these decisions that we make. And then finally, recognizing those trends that I showed over the state, that this isn't just like a one-time, a blip, like there isn't something that just happened that caused this for one instance, but it's the result of a system that moves us in this direction. And so trying to be really thoughtful about long-term enrollment as we make these decisions and the implications for the programming that we're able to deliver. Some common questions that came into the themes. One was around school consolidation. I know you as a board have told me that if we were going to consolidate schools or programs, really, that you would want to have a thoughtful conversation about that. And that takes a while. So with this proposal, we are not anticipating any kind of school consolidation as a recommendation. There's also questions about bonds versus levies and general fund. And so this community passed a bond to build schools. Once you pass a bond, then it's our obligation to build those schools. And so there's some questions around, well, you have 2 new schools, shouldn't you just close those schools, or why did you build those schools? And it's about the commitment that was made for those tax dollars that came in. Lots of suggestions about 4-day weeks, and I love those suggestions, but our state obligates us to have 180 days of instruction. So if you do 4-day weeks, it just means you have more weeks and your costs aren't going to change really. So it's something that we could consider in the future, but probably more from a programming standpoint versus a budget standpoint. Also some suggestions around why not just flip to remote some of the time. Obviously, that's going to impact our classified hourly workers as well. So we want to be really thoughtful about that. But there's also rules around if you're doing remote learning, then what type of school or funding program is that? And so there's a lot of considerations for that. And then just the question around, is the state going to close the gaps? No, unless people get mad enough and make them close the gaps would be the answer to that question. So these are just a couple of snapshots from the slides that from the surveys that you all gave to us. It's no surprise that the number 1 reduction would be myself and central office, pretty much unanimously, right? And then every other one is pretty much, we want small class sizes, we want a lot of programming, and we don't want any reduction in staff. And so the hard part is something's got to give there. I gave the opportunity to the board to reduce me, to change me out, and they want me here right now anyway. And so I'll keep working on that. But it's just a really difficult decision for everyone. I know the board hasn't approved anything that they didn't think was critical to the success of students and programming and staff. And so to say things like, well, let's reduce our non-essential kind of runs counter to all the diligence that you've done in trying to approve budgets beforehand. So extremely, extremely challenging, and at a systems level challenging, but we know it affects individuals. It affects their families, it affects their livelihood, it affects the student experience. All those things I know weigh heavy on you, they weigh heavy on me as well. So this evening, there is a resolution for your consideration. The resolution doesn't say anything specific. It says, except that you need a plan on how to do this. And so when we develop this plan, just like any other budget, your family budget, there are probably things in your budget that are requirements that are non-negotiable if you can help it. Housing, food, clothing, those kinds of things. We have similar requirements in our budget. Federally funded programs that are linked to the funding source. So if we reduce the program, we also reduce the funding, won't get us any ground and will limit services to students. Special education services are protected as well. We need lights on, we need gas for the buses, those kinds of things. And then our compensation structures are ratified in collective bargaining agreements. And so if we were to consider changing those, we would need to do that mutually with both parties. And so those are things that we're obligated to moving forward. Where we do have greater flexibility is the number of staff that we employ and the materials, resources, and programming that we deliver. Because of those requirements, when you think about the 8 to 10%, that 8 to 10% reduction disproportionately hits different parts of our budget that's not required. So that's a challenge as well. So between now, if you adopt that resolution tonight and March 12th, my job is to go back and forth and to try to figure out a pathway for your consideration. And I need to do that with the input we receive from community in our partnership with our advisories and working with our labor leader partners, all those entities, and to try to bring that back to you. I anticipate that back and forth will be 3, 4, 5, 6 times before we get to March 12th so that I make sure that I'm on the right track with what you're looking for. The decision itself on the resolution for a reduction plan would be up for your consideration if you approve tonight's resolution. Between now and March 12th, we would also work with our labor partners to clarify any contract language regarding reduction in force to make sure that we're interpreting it consistently and accurately. We want to develop supports for affected staff. We want to work with once if the resolution were to happen, then we'd need to implement that plan and work in partnership with them. So there's a lot we still don't know, but what we do know is that we'll have less staff and we'll have less resources next year. We do know that we have to work through our reduction in force through the agreements that we've put in place. We do know that when we notify our affected employees that we want to have every opportunity for them to find a different job in the district. We still have openings in our district in certain areas, but we recognize that that's not the preferred job for people and it may have other impacts to them. We want to also just acknowledge that this board has not directed me to eliminate any specific programming or anything of that nature, but there is an acknowledgement that if you have less people and less resources, that the programming level is also going to look differently as we move forward. I think the goal that you've shared with me is that if we have to reduce, we want to be ready to build back up too. And if you take something all the way apart, it's very difficult to do that. And I already mentioned before the consolidation of schools was a theme, and so we wanted to make sure we brought that out. On our website, if you're a family member or a staff member, you had a link to this website, but there's a lot of interactive information. We continue to build FAQs there. There's an opportunity to weigh in or ask questions on that site as well. So I'd encourage people to do that, especially over the next 4 to 5 weeks. So I'll pause and see if the board has any questions on that. And then I promise I'll be very quick on the strategic plan because I know we have some recognitions tonight.
I'm appreciative of all the information. I know this is a lot of information, but it's, at least for me, I feel like as someone who's fairly new to the board, having repetitive information and it really helps me understand why we're doing and what the goal is and keeping us centered.
I want to thank Dr. Snell and team. I think the opportunity, we had so many inputs in the process of developing our equity policy and then strategic plans. We've gotten, I think we have a good sense of the priorities of the community, but specifically around the budget allocations, this additional opportunity to provide input around these budget reductions, I think is important and it's still open. So for any of you that have not had a chance to engage, with the website. I think it's really important that we do collect as much community feedback around these reductions. None of these are easy decisions. I think I have the honor of serving with Director Smith in the Budget Committee. And when we look at staffing, we lead with serving students, and all of our staff are employed because they serve a student need. And so these are very difficult and challenging decisions, and the community input's very valuable.
I was just going to echo that about the community feedback. Dr. Snell shared with us earlier today kind of some of the initial results of the feedback we've been getting. And so looking through and seeing not only the graphs of the data and kind of what the feedback is from the community is really helpful for me as a board member. And also just reading through the comments and seeing some of those themes that are emerging. It's helpful just to get an idea of what the thoughts are from our community members. As somebody who works in the schools, I know, kind of what some of the impacts can be from budget reductions, but, that's just my perspective. And so hearing a broader perspective has been important. And I have gotten some good feedback too from those who have gone through that exercise of, I think, in the staff advisory, they talked about that exercise of, okay, here's what you have, like, where would you, if you have to reduce this much? And I feel like that's helpful to kind of see that situation that we're in with, when you have to reduce from different places, if you don't reduce from one place, you have to make a greater reduction here. And so seeing kind of that difficult challenge. I've heard some feedback from people who've gone through that exercise that it's been really eye-opening and a helpful process. So just the more feedback that you as community members can give to us, we appreciate that because it's obviously not a very fun part of the job that we have. So.
Feel like we're all on the same wavelength there. I was just gonna say the same thing, like how valuable that feedback is. And I just, like, for me, and I'm sure it's true for other directors too, like whenever we get updates from Dr. Snell, like the first thing I look at are the feedback that we're getting, the survey results, the information from the staff advisory group that we got, I think it was last week. Like, it's just incredibly helpful, and it's definitely not something where you click submit and it goes into the ether and nobody ever looks at it. Like, it is very much an important part of our process. And so, again, I would just encourage anyone who hasn't to please provide your feedback as well, because the wider variety of voices and the broader perspectives we get, the better idea we have of what it is that our community wants us to prioritize and focus on. I mean, it's an incredibly difficult process. It's a painful process, I'll be honest. It's a hard conversation that we're having, but we want to make sure that the decisions we're making are reflective of what it is that the community would prioritize.
And I'll
Sure,
just
Dr.
chime in. Yeah, I'll just chime in for just a little bit because I think my fellow directors said everything that I was thinking. I'd just add that while the numbers are the things that are driving this need, and the data are the things that we are looking at to help make the decision, our hearts are also in this. We know very clearly that the decisions we're making aren't just the numbers on the papers in front of us. These are people who have chosen to serve, and it's we just understand that. And as mentioned before, these are really difficult decisions, and they're not ones that we take lightly. So, thank you.
I just wanted to add one more. I think you heard earlier that we all were involved in different ways in the legislative process. And I think to Dr. Snell's point, we need to continue making noise as a community to support public education. I think part of the challenges that we're facing here is the impetus that we are advocating hard in Olympia, so we can have stabilized funding. I think especially, and we'll get to it later, but you know, the importance of our staff and those ongoing relationships, the relationships our students feel, and so wanting to have that continuity of service. But that's it for me.
Thank you all. Quickly, we have adopted the strategic planning process, and we have begun to do progress monitoring in each of our study sessions. And our mission: inspire learning, growing community, each student every day. When you came in, there was an opportunity to grab a flyer that is an update. It's an artifact in our progress monitoring kind of journey. The website will be pushed out to the community in the coming days. And so there's an opportunity to go in deeper there. At our last study session, we had our student advisory present about their goal related to belonging. And we had an update related to student-centered experience and early learning plan. And that was the focus of the flyer from today. And you can either grab a hard copy if you want, or you can scan that. Each board meeting, there will be an update. So as this strategic plan unfolds, there's kind of a chapter with each month. We also had an update from our student-centered community goal, and that really focused on increased communication with our families. Number one, we appreciate everyone's patience as we migrate from a former data system and communication tool to updated ones, which is really challenging. But just a couple of highlights with that. When we focused on early learning in the previous goal, we also had a through line to our communication where we were able to increase access for people benefiting from transitional kindergarten, and really increase the number of students we're serving and the outreach through our communication plan. And then finally, we had an update on a student-centered staff goal related to the professional learning community model, which is really teachers working collectively to look at student learning data, analyze that data, and make decisions on how to best serve those students moving forward. So the last item that I have for this evening beyond the strategic plan update is just a safety update. We continue to be challenged in our community with safety issues, and certainly our schools are not immune to that. Over the last several years, we've been reaching out to law enforcement, both Clark County Sheriff's Office and Vancouver Police Department, around a partnership because our school resource officers went away during the pandemic, and we haven't brought those back. But we still feel like it's very important to have close contact with our law enforcement. And so we focused on some priorities. One was around emergency prevention, one was around safety response. And then another priority we had was about community input. And so I just want to plug that we'll be reaching out to the community in the coming months here to have a series of at school town halls where we're trying to collect information about what are people worried about? What are their concerns? How can we come together to address those? And what role should law enforcement play in that process? The city is also beginning conversations around that and has a potential ballot item in the future about law enforcement, policing. They share that safety and policing tend to be at the top of what they hear from our community as concerns or opportunities. And so we want to kind of work alongside of them. As I mentioned in our previous thing about the gap between funding from the state and where we're at as a district, there's very little resources for safety. And so all those are coming from local funds here. And so it makes sense to partner with the city as they're looking at opportunities in the future. So I just want to let people know about that, and then we'll keep information going out about that in the future. And that ends a very long superintendent report this evening.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is our recognition portion of the meeting. Tonight the board will recognize staff for their accomplishments within our district. Executive Director of Human Resources, Jeff Fish, will read the names of each staff member and a short description of why the employee has been chosen to receive this award. If you are being recognized tonight, please walk to the podium and receive you'll be presented with your award. Please then pause in front of the photo backdrop where Superintendent Jeff Snell and I will join you for a photo. At the very end of all the Employee Excellence Awards, we'll convene for one group photo as well. And then after the recognition portion, if you choose to leave, this is a large crowded room, so please just do so quietly so we can continue on with the meeting.
Thank you, Director Sproul. It's time to recognize the February Employee Excellence Award recipients. The following employees were selected by a committee of their peers for commitment to students and staff of Vancouver Public Schools. These recipients were among the many outstanding nominees who create a caring environment and positive workplace through their exceptional efforts. For information about each recipient or to submit a nomination, please visit the district's website. The first recipient is Carla Feltz. Carla Feltz, the Family Engagement and Technical Assistance Coordinator, is an extremely valuable member of the community schools team. She provides district-wide support to coordinators, schools, students, and families. She is passionate about collaborating with others to ensure that barriers are removed and students have what they need to be in school and ready to learn. She is also incredibly resourceful and able to find support for students and families in the most challenging of times. Thank you, Carla. Our next recipient is Keith Johnson. Keith Johnson, a restorative practices coach at Alki and Jefferson Middle Schools, is passionate about his work and committed to building a culture of belonging at the schools he serves. When working with students, he creates a space where the issues can be reviewed and students can be heard. Students always leave the conversation with their dignity intact. Keith has a truly amazing way with students, and his passion for the work is evident in everything he does. Thank you, Keith. Our next recipient is Courtney Olson. Courtney Olson is an amazing educator at Hazeldale Elementary School who is committed to helping students develop their math skills. She creates unique math activities that are fun and engaging, and she involves students in being responsible for their learning. Besides her dedication in the classroom, Courtney is the co-facilitator for the Lighthouse staff team, head of the garden team, and an iReady coordinator. Thank you, Courtney. Courtney's unavailable to join us tonight. Our next recipient is Ashley Peroni. Ashley is also unavailable to attend, but Ashley is a phenomenal educator at Fort Vancouver High School. In addition to her excellent teaching skills, she also has a way of creating an inclusive classroom environment where all learning styles are welcome. Students feel respected and have the same classroom experience regardless of their academic background. Ashley is a wonderful role model for students and teachers alike. Thank you, Ashley. Our next recipient is Stephanie Terry. Stephanie Terry is not only an inspirational teacher at Alki Middle School, she is a wonderful person who is involved in nearly every aspect of the school. Her love of teaching is evident in the care she shows students, and her communications with parents and other staff are especially strong. Besides her classroom responsibilities, she teaches the school's leadership program and participates in monthly observances. Thank you, Stephanie. Now we'll recognize members of our staff for their accomplishments. For national board certification, Congratulations to our teachers who have earned National Board Certification. The National Board Certification is the most respected professional certification available in education and provides numerous benefits to teachers, students, and schools. It was designed to develop, retain, and recognize accomplished teachers and to generate ongoing improvement in schools nationwide. Please join me in congratulating Karina Nickerson for their receiving the National Board Certification in Music, Early Adolescence through Young Adulthood. Please join me in congratulating Christopher Brosnan for receiving the National Board Certification in Generous Early Childhood. Tricia Hofarth for receiving their National Board Certification in Generalist Early Childhood. Katie North for receiving their National Board Certification in Exceptional Needs Specialist Early Childhood through Young Adult Mild Moderate Disabilities. Katie is unable to attend this evening. Kristen Ruberlin for receiving their National Board Certification in Career and Technical Education, Early Adolescence through Young Adult Business, Marketing, and Financial Services. Kristen is unable to attend this evening. Congratulations to all of our National Board Certified teachers. The National Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association has recognized Shannon Long as a certified athletic administrator. To earn this distinction, Shannon Long has demonstrated the highest level of knowledge and expertise in the field of interscholastic athletic administration. The voluntary certification process included a thorough evaluation of Shannon's educational background, experience, and professional contributions, as well as a rigorous, comprehensive written examination. Shannon Long is one of an elite group of interscholastic athletic administrators nationwide to attain this level of professionalism. Congratulations, Shannon. This evening, we will also recognize some amazing elementary school students for their accomplishments. Congratulations to the Salmon Creek Robotics team for their first place trophy and many other outstanding achievements at the first LEGO League Challenge. At this time, we invite Samantha Wilkes to introduce the Salmon Creek Robotics team and share highlights of their season.
Good evening. My name is Amy Hosrath, and I'm one of the 2 LEGO robotics coaches at Salmon Creek Elementary.
And I'm Sam Wilkes, the other robotics coach.
We're so excited to introduce you to the Salmon Creek Robotics team. We're actually the only elementary school that has a LEGO robotics club team. So that's a really cool thing. We're actually, there's 9 of us. 4th and 5th graders. We compete against kids ages 9 to 14. And this year we won, well, Sam will go into more of that, but okay. So we're going to state, which is really exciting. We'd like to thank the Hayes Foundation and the Salmon Creek PTA for funding us. Without their generous donations, we wouldn't be able to have the club. So we definitely appreciate them. So thanks so much.
And we did it. Thank you. And I'll tell you what the robotics club is. So basically what we do is they spend 6 hours a week from mid-September into December, this year longer because going to state, where they have to design a robot that will complete very specific challenges on this sort of obstacle course on what we call our challenge table. And they have to come up with an innovative solution to a real world problem. This year, they won first place on this at our qualifying tournament where they designed a virtual museum that actually works within our school that they built in order to bring a community together through shared interests, and they are going to run it all year round. So our robotics team, starting from over here, we have Xavier, Lauren, Taylor, Amelia, we have Vienna, Caitlin, Olivia, Eve, and Sean. Maybe the yep, 2 rows of help people in the back. Perfect. Yeah, we're gonna get rows. You're good, just right there. Okay. Okay. And 1, 2, 3. Got it. Perfect. Yeah. As people file out, I'll get us set up for the next portion of our meeting. We are starting our audience participation. Just a few reminders before we get started. Public comment is the time in our meeting where the board and administrative staff welcome comments from the public. If you would like to address the board and did not have an opportunity to sign up at the start of the meeting, please do so now. The sign up is in the back of the room. You may continue to sign up at any time during the public comment portion of our meeting. We ask that you approach the podium and state your name and your affiliation with the district. For the record, you will then have 3 minutes to make your comments. When you hear a chime, please conclude your remarks. If you have materials or additional comments you would like the board to review, please hand them to the staff in the back of the boardroom. This information will be provided to the superintendent and the board. Because most matters require fact-finding and review, and the state's Open Public Meeting Act restricts deliberation on topics that have not been placed on the publicly noticed agenda in advance, the board is not able to respond to any public comments made at this time. If follow-up action is necessary, the board will ask Dr. Snell to work with the administrative staff to consider the information and respond accordingly. As a regular business meeting of the board, we expect the audience to conduct themselves professionally and courteously. Speakers are also expected to be respectful. We ask the audience to refrain from clapping, cheering, or commenting while others give public comments. Whether you are in support or against. We recognize there are diverse beliefs and feelings across our stakeholders in our district, but one thing that we have in common is that we all want to do what is best for our children. We are here today to work towards their future. The board asks that personnel complaints be submitted in writing. Disruptive conduct may cause the meeting to be adjourned and all audience members to be removed per RCW. The board appreciates, listens, and cares about the broad range of perspectives in our community. Thank you for your comments. So we will start tonight with our Zoom comments. I believe we have one person signed up. You, Pittman.
Yes,
You
I'm
may,
here.
yes, you may state your name and affiliation with the district and you'll have 3 minutes.
Sorry, I just getting a few minutes earlier. I'm still trying to fit in. Is that okay? Wait for me a little bit later?
I'm sorry, we start with our Zoom public comments and we have you queued up. Are you not able to give your public comment now?
Oh, yes, I can.
Okay, yes, you'll have 3 minutes once you begin.
Okay, my name is Yu. I have 3 kids in Vancouver Public School. So basically, we love our school right now so far, but I'm feeling something kind of like bothering me. Probably just from my background, my growing up background. I feeling like I really don't like those young girls and these boys kind of like in a public place, they kind of like have different, relationships. That's bothering me. That's all. Thank you. Everything others just kind of like awesome and great.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We will now proceed with our in-person comments. The first one signed up in advance was Caitlin Miller. Are you here? Yes. Oh, you signed up on here as well. Okay, then we will start with this list. Remember, you have until the end of public comments and the sign-up sheets are in the back. So we will start with Lynn Davidson.
Hello, my name is Lynn Davidson. I am a Washington Education Association representative, and I serve the VPS members. I would like to say that good evening, Superintendent Snell and board members and the audience. You're here for a very important meeting tonight, and my comments are strictly about how the RIF is going to be run. I totally support getting ideas from parents in the community and teachers and staff about what they want their schools to look like, right? But I have some concerns. And my intention this evening is to speak to the district's announcement of an imminent reduction in force. If my recollection is clear, when the ESSER money was being received, no one asked the Vancouver Public School employees or community members how they thought the money should be allocated to best serve the students of the Vancouver Public Schools. Yet here we find ourselves, VPS employees, the public being asked to make recommendations for budget cuts using a budget reduction exercise. The first exercise is entitled High Level Reduction Exercise Worksheet, which is essentially an Excel activity where the participant gets to plug in percentages of personnel reductions for all VPS employees. The second high-level exercise reduction worksheet gives the employees and the community members the opportunity to fill out recommendations for cuts in materials, supplies, and operating costs. Employees and the community are being asked to make recommendations for cuts regardless of one's knowledge of these job categories or supply costs, and how that will all impact what happens every day in your schools. So I want to share with you why I think this is an inappropriate exercise. When my husband started working at the airport, there was no union for him and his colleagues. They were at-will employees. Management decided that they wanted or needed to downsize their cleaning staff. So they passed out a piece of paper to every cleaner that was there and asked them to put someone's name on it that they thought should be let go. And the person with the most votes was the person that got to go. So I was appalled by that process. But now, in my opinion, the VPS exercises mentioned above are a white-collar version of the same activity. Essentially, management is asking employees and community to vote their union brothers and sisters off the island, so to speak. They would like you to participate in this work that is their work. And I've seen this play out many times. It's a catch-22. If you participate in the exercise, you have the district feeling good about that. And was that the chime? Okay. I think I have a second.
We no longer yield time.
Oh,
Okay,
alrighty then.
thank you. Our next on the list for citizen comments is April Fincher.
Thank you. So just so I know, so I can't give my time to Lynn.
No, just as a point of order, we updated our board meeting protocols about 14 months ago,
Perfect.
just for the interest.
Well, my name is April Fincher and I am a learning support one-on-one paraeducator and I am in VPS. And right now I am working very hard to talk to the legislators and I'm going to Olympia on Sunday and Monday. And I'm going to tell them, you need to fund these things because our districts cannot afford to do this. It is very important, especially to our students. One of the things that was a little upsetting though, is I don't understand how there was a job fair the November 30th and a week later, the unions were told that their staff needs to be cut. That was very upsetting. Also, I do have to say a very positive thing. I came from another large district in this area and Vancouver does take care of their employees. And in times like this, I know that they will try to find other positions for us. And I very much appreciate that. And that's why I will stay at Vancouver as long as possible. And I appreciate all of your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Christopher Smith.
My name's Christopher Smith, and I'm a special programs para at Columbia River High School. Okay, so first I'd like to briefly address the community outreach. I gotta say it feels a little bit disingenuous considering that the last time we did community outreach, many of my colleagues who participated in good faith had their comments deleted. And that just really felt icky. Community engagement is not just a box to check, and you should not ask for participation if you've already made your decision. It's not something that you get to tout as a certification on your decision. This time you're asking unions directly for involvement. Don't you think it's a little bit tacky to ask your lowest paid workers which of their friends should be fired? Staff cuts are an administrative and a governance decision. And if they're asking us to do their jobs as well as their own, I guess we know where the cuts should start. It's not entirely surprising that we've arrived at rifts considering the decisions of district leadership. In just one example, what began as a request for an iPad stand that swivels in 2020 turned into a pilot school trying out swivel brand iPad stands and their accompanying $40 proprietary cables. When the educators there responded that no, they did not like them or want them, the district spent $1 million on sending swivel stands to every storage room in the district where they gather dust to this day. Where's the accountability for the financial mismanagement that will now cost people their livelihoods? And furthermore, why do you always pivot when we ask for detailed breakdowns of COVID spending? Just interesting things here. Perhaps just as importantly, it's going to cost VPS skilled educators who only need a tiny push to leave the field altogether. It's no secret that education has been rough lately, and many of my colleagues are considering leaving the field for greener pastures, or at least pastures at all. Classroom teachers who work from 7 to 6, Sunday through Friday, nutrition service workers who know exactly how neurodivergent students like their food prepared, and paraeducators who've endured trauma right alongside their students are on the chopping block. I still hear the words of my suicidal student as I restrained her, yelling, "My mom is dead. My mom is dead." These things will echo in my head forever. And I know that my colleagues have similar experiences. These are the people that are on the chopping block. We have, since the pandemic and before, we've had to make do. We've sacrificed and we've suffered for our students. And now you're telling us you cannot even afford the barely safe skeleton crew that we've been running on. Where's the accountability here? Who is accountable? I guess it's us. It looks like we are, since we're the ones on the chopping block. We're the ones accountable for those decisions. Bargaining is approaching, and we are watching you. Do right by our kids, do right by our community, and do right by us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ben Mole.
Hello, I'm Ben Mall, parent of two current Jason Lee Middle School students. I'll do my best to read a co-written chronology of some events at Jason Lee on February 1st and 2nd, 2024 from our perspective. The speakers following me will speak further. President Spell, you stated where actions needed, Dr. Snell or others would follow up. Yes, please. Thank you. I'm going to do my best to remove student names from the following. Wednesday, January 31st, 2024 at lunch, a student pushed another and called her something I choose not to say. She told her mom that night. It was reported to the school. Thursday morning, the name caller got in trouble, referrals, etc. So Thursday after school, pardon me, different screenshot. Thursday after school, the name caller and a friend confronted the student and her friends, pardon me, and a couple of girls, at which point the mom started yelling at and harassing the girls. She drove off, came back to campus with an adult sister. While she was gone, the name caller and friend had left. So the other girls were the only ones left. The mom threatened them, admins intervened, asked them to leave the campus. The mother very specifically threatened that she was going to return the next day, Friday, with her daughter, some of her daughter's 20-year-old friends, and beat up said students and friends. Thursday afternoon and Friday morning, the mother of a threatened student called the school because she heard about the threats and was concerned about her safety. She asked the school she should keep her threatened student home from school. School advised they had a safety plan, go ahead and send the student. Friday morning, I believe is the husband of said mother, i.e. the father's student who was a recipient of the thing I choose not to say, came to school to warn the administrator his wife was unpredictable and very likely to act harmfully. There were other words used by the father. Friday afternoon, at some point before the last bell, the mother did show up on campus with several other adults, including her adult daughter in her 20s and 2 or 3 other friends who were in ski masks. The administrators knew at some point prior to the bell ringing, these adults were outside in ski masks, let the final bell ring, and all students were yet dismissed. The threatened student went to the office as perhaps part of the safety plan. The associate principal was told to escort her to the bus outside. Upon setting foot outside the school, the associate principal saw a situation, turned back around, went inside with the student. Principal then indicated they just need to get the kid on the bus and proceeded to take the threatened student outside directly toward the group of adults waiting to assault her. The threatened student never made it to the bus. She was hit, bit, hair pulled, and kicked. Excuse me. All this in front of all the students who had just been dismissed and parents waiting to pick up their students. Law enforcement arrived shortly afterwards, as far as I understand, when the assault was over. And that is the end of, I made it. Under 2 minutes.
Thank you. Tamara Butler.
Hi, my name is Tamara Milagros Butler, and my family's been part of the Jason Lee community for 5.5 years. Our 8th grader and her friends witnessed the brutal assault of a minor by adults directly in front of Jason Lee. I know firsthand how traumatizing this was for them because 6 other Jason Lee students were at our house for a sleepover the night after. Sitting around the breakfast table in the morning, I listened to them share their experience. They had tears in their eyes as they sat around our kitchen table, eating waffles and cheesy eggs that morning. I was so sad as they described what was essentially the Jason Lee administration, not just making reckless decisions, but actually facilitating the assault by walking the openly threatened student away from the safety of the building and directly towards the threat. The choices that administration made that day didn't just put one student's safety at risk, it put every single student's safety at risk. I was terrified listening to those 8th graders that morning, terrified about what could have happened if any one of those assaulters had arrived with more than their fists and their teeth, terrified about a serious threat to the school that doesn't come with convenient 24-hour notice, terrified to send our daughter back to a school where the administration's judgment and lack of preparedness shows they're not properly trained. That tells me this is not just a Jason Lee problem, but a Vancouver School District problem. Let's not send administrators into schools without the tools to keep kids safe. Safe and common sense operational policies are pretty easy to implement, it seems to me. Policies like don't dismiss the students when there is someone outside with a ski mask on. Make sure the PA system is working. Make sure security cameras are working. Make sure there are enough adults present when incidents are most likely to occur. Safe operational practices like those are important, but not sufficient. I wish I could say I was surprised to hear about the events that led to this brutal assault. I wasn't. I've known Jason Lee to have a culture which undertreats disrespect and one in which bullying and fights are common and where racism and racial slurs are prolific and tolerated. Safe operational practices won't help us there. They won't convert Jason Lee's culture to a safe, mutually respectful, anti-racist one. That is the real calling here. That will require trained leadership that's willing to collaborate with students. Please notice, I'm not saying discipline. Collaborate with students. Leadership that's willing to take an honest look at the current mindset and do the hard work of changing that mindset. I don't have all the answers, but I am highly motivated and I want to be part of the solution. Our students, our teachers, our administrators need and deserve better.
Thank you. Caitlin Miller.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Miller. I'm a former educator of Vancouver and a current educator. My daughter attends Jason Lee as well. I want to talk about the harassment and intimidation and bullying process in Vancouver, an area that needs improvement, especially in making it accessible to families, which I think might have helped preventing this from happening. I want to start by contrasting an incident that I had with my daughter in the beginning of the year. In September, my child came home from school and let me know that she had that another student had threatened her. My daughter spent most of the day with her counselor and the restorative coach and avoiding this person. I reached out to community members to figure out how I should handle this, how I should keep my child safe. I started by reporting the incident on the district harassment, intimidation, and bullying forum online. And then I took that information and I emailed it to the staff at Jason Lee. The staff at Jason Lee reached out. We came up with an initial plan of how to keep her safe for that day. That day she came home and let me know that the threats and the intimidation had continued. I documented that in an email and had another conversation with admin. We tried security escorting her into and out of buildings. We had her leave classes earlier or later to avoid the student. And we eventually came to the difficult decision that she needed to change her schedule and her classes in order to get her away from the student as much as possible. The intimidation and harassment continued. Meanwhile, we encouraged our daughter to stay away from the people involved and to run if cornered. And we also provided her some CPI blocking training in case her hair was grabbed and she was attacked. Later, I spoke with a retired admin I knew, and she suggested we do a pathways plan. So that was another suggestion I came to admin with, another way we could keep my child safe. The harassment continued. We then implemented a check-in, check-out program with the staff at the school so that they could help keep track of the harassment and address it as it came up. With the intensive collaboration of the Jason Lee team, we were able to keep my child safe. It did require constant ongoing communication. It required me to access extensive resources. It was time-consuming, cumbersome, and required me to take time from work as well as accessing other things. I'm speaking about this because it relates to that antecedent to the February 2nd attack by a mother and 3 other adults on an 8th grade student at dismissal. The rationale of these attackers was that they had contacted Jason Lee about harassment and it had continued. And so they came to campus to take it into their own hands. So how can we, especially under the upcoming budget cuts, make sure that the process for harassment, intimidation, bullying is readily accessible, effective, and transparent to all parents and students, How can we be done so that no parent ever comes to the conclusion the only way to keep their child safe at school is for them to take it into their own hands? Thank you.
Thank you. Kamara Banfield.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. I'm really on the peripheral of this conversation. I'm friends of the parents that were involved, and my daughter was at Jason Lee. I'm a parent of 2 Vancouver School District children, but my daughter was at Jason Lee and experienced the same type of culture that was going on. In the end, we ended up keeping her home from the last 2 weeks of school because of it. I will clearly state that not only was she bullied, she was one that bullied. There is a culture there that girls of color are either on the top or on the bottom, and they better choose their place. And this is directly related to this event. You're watching students of color, various students of color having to choose a side or other. And it feels like the reason people aren't stepping in is because they are that group of people. I may be completely incorrect about this, but I've watched my daughter lose herself, become suicidal, and wish to not even attend school anymore. We tried to address the bullying. Same thing happened, as this mother had indicated. She was the one that was eating lunch alone with counselors. She was the one being escorted from classroom to classroom so that she could be safe. So she further was isolated from the school. There is an issue. I'm not saying what that exact issue is. I'm willing to be a part of the solution as well. This is a conversation that we should be having. I don't think the same thing would be happening if these were not students of color. And that's how this whole incident was about students of color. So I want us to open up our eyes and talk about the elephant in the room and find solutions that help our kids all feel safe when going to school and all feel like they are belonged.
Thank you. Amy Surface.
Hi, my name is Amy Surface. I'm a parent of a prior Vancouver School District student. He graduated last year. I'm also a secretary at one of our elementary schools, and I wear different hats in our community with different organizations, one of which is our VPS group. It's here today. I had some bullet points that I was going to speak to, and that just blew me away. It kind of goes hand in hand, though, too. We are operating on a shoestring staff right now. Behaviors are escalated. We have just come out of 3 years of isolation, and our students are having a hard time being with each other. We, as a community, as staff, as community members, we have to kind of give hugs to our kids in the best way that we can is by support. We don't have that support. And if we have rifts where we're going to continue to decrease the amount of people that are available for our students, that's going to get worse. One of the consent agenda items is, it's an awesome thing, is the homework cafe. You're probably not going to hear about it because it's inside a consent agenda, which unless they want to speak about it, they have to pull it out. Is a grant opportunity with the liaise with the city of Vancouver. It's a wonderful program, $495,000 for that. It's a tutoring program for our students to receive additional supports outside of school, in school, paid for by the city of Vancouver. If you divided that by $30,000, which is a generous salary for a para, we'd have 16 and a half extra paras in those schools. We wouldn't need that program. They would have the extra support that they need inside their current schools now. We would have extra paras to spread to maybe some other schools that have some other things going on as well. That's extra eyes in our classroom, extra eyes in our recess. I can't even, between muddy clothes and bullying going on in the playground, there's, you know, maybe 2 or 3 paras out there at the 20-minute recesses that are going on. That's bare bones, guys. Our ratio for field trips is 1 to 8. There's 100 to 200, maybe 300 kids out there. So that's a problem. There's not enough eyes to catch the bullying as it's happening. Yeah, you increase the paras that support that's at the middle school and the high school level, that's more eyes. That's more resources. That's more somebody's that they can go to and say, hey, something's happening over here. Can you guys go help out? You know, it's those little things that really have a huge impact. I urge you, I beyond urge you. Go to the WA website, go to the Washington State PTA website, whatever website you have to go to, click the links to contact your legislatures. They do need to change the staffing allocations. We, as constituents, need to enforce that they do that so that we can get more monies in our schools across the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Chipo?
I'm shaking because I'm cold, not because I'm nervous. I just, hi, Dr. Snell, board. My name is Chipo Sowards. I'm a media clerk at Hudson's Bay High School and Lincoln Elementary School. I'm also the president for VPS by classified staff. I represent our clerks, paraeducators, secretaries, and technology specialists. When our superintendent, Dr. Snell, met with all three unions, VPS, which is ourselves, VA Teachers Union, and SEIU custodians, it was heartbreaking to hear when he announced that Vancouver Public Schools is planning on eliminating positions due to a 35 million budget deficit. I know the cuts are going to make a negative impact if there's not enough staff to support students in the classroom and in our buildings, just like Amy stated. Dr. Snell showed at the meetings, special education funding increased by 11.2 million for the 2023 to 2024 school year, and an increased demand for services and employee costs are projected to drive expenses to 8.25 million higher, in addition to federal COVID relief phasing out. My question to the board, before you decide to cut positions that existed before COVID-19 happened, how much COVID relief funding did Vancouver Public Schools receive? And as a union local, I'm requesting a documented breakdown of how much money was used and where it went, because we have not seen that. It is also personal to me. I've been sharing the story over and over and over again, but it's the story of my life, it seems like. My position as a media clerk was followed for 3 months during COVID. As a single mom with a child in high school, he goes to Hudson's Bay High School. Unemployment was not enough to pay for my bills. Secretaries could not collect unemployment since they were working only 4 hours. So how do you survive on that? It was very devastating for so many of us. In 2018, I received a letter that my position was going to be eliminated in 2019-2020 school year. I couldn't even tell you the trauma that we've been through, and here we are again. It's just really heartbreaking to me. My job, as well as counseling and disciplinary clerks, are considered to be the most unsecure positions in the school district, and each of those positions is essential. Before you cut jobs, I encourage you to visit our schools so you can see what we do. We've seen the trend throughout the country when Spokane, Washington decided to lay off librarians. Evergreen School District did the same. I hope Vancouver does not make the same mistakes. Libraries are the hub of the school. Librarians and media clerks, not only do we provide technology and books to students and staff, librarians teach students on a daily basis. They co-teach in classrooms, while media clerks ensure that libraries function efficiently by providing necessary support to students, staff, and parents. We provide a safe space for students. They come to read, relax. We call a library a village because you can't even walk around. Did it ring?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Linda Freeland.
Hello, everyone. My name is Linda Freeland. I'm a media clerk at Columbia River High School. I've been with the district since 2009. A member of the community since 1995, and I had 2 children go through the Vancouver Public Schools. I'm sorry, I can only address a few things. Our library also at Columbia River High School is a hub. And everything that Chipo said, I would say, in addition, we have club meetings and we have students who come play games during lunch. So I was happy to hear, Ms. Sproul, that you said that the most important thing is relationships, and that's what this is all about. And that's why staff is so important. So rather than looking at cuts in staff, I think maybe we could look at programs, well, I'm just going to read my list. I'm not very polished at speaking, but I don't have much time. iReady. I don't know how students do on iReady when they're in elementary school and middle school, but by the time they get to high school, they're completely disengaged. They're bored. There's nothing in it for them. I can't see how the numbers that you get from those tests are doing anything for students. And teachers already do assessments. They assess by their curriculum. They know what the educational requirements are for their students, and they go and they assess throughout the school year through their curriculum. And we I learned that we train teachers at $100 a head who are not reading or math teachers. So that's some thousands of dollars. Also, I tried to find out the cost per student. And the closest I could come was $7 per student. So you have $7 per student for math, $7 per student for reading, 22,000 students, approximately over $300,000. And that's not including licensing or consultant fees. Other things that we could look at are, new staff hired that we didn't have before COVID funding, Creative Cloud subscriptions, which were for every teacher in the school district, as far as at least every teacher at our high school, even if they're not doing that program. Character Strong. It would be great if we could just have interaction between the teachers and the staff and the students. We have terrible behavior problems. You've heard about that. I could add to that, but I only have 3 minutes. Non-reusable workbooks. We throw out so many workbooks every year that are purchased and not used for programs like Agile Mind. So if you would come to us and ask us, what are you using and what are you not using? This is a relationship between the board and all the people up here who are making literally millions of dollars. Come and talk to us, please. We want to have a relationship with you too. We want to be heard. All right.
Thank you. Larry Rowe.
My name is Larry Rowe, and I live about 500 meters from Lakeshore Elementary. I have no children in this district, and I was educated 250 miles north of here in Bellingham. I'd like 2 things today. One, thank you for the board. I think you've done a very good job communicating all of the data over the last 4 years that have gotten you and everybody else to tonight. And my compassion for everyone who has to go through change. But I wanted to talk about actually something that is on your agenda tonight, which is your curriculum. And it's an opportunity, not a threat, as I see it. There's a common theme in 3 of the books that you considered. I have no issue with them. I think they're good books. But the theme that I see in them is that individuals through activism should oppose groups of people working together. Specifically, those books are about evil companies, construction companies, and good activists that are stopping concerted effort, experts working together. I think our opportunity is to provide narratives for our students where we are all working together towards the same goals. Thank you.
Next we have Lauren Zeff.
My name is Lauren Zeff. I have 4 grandkids in the Vancouver School District. Abraham Lincoln, our 16th president, was born February 12th, 1809. He led the country through the Civil War, preserving the concept of American democracy, a system that hadn't been fully realized, but that he saw as the last best hope of Earth to prove that people could govern themselves. At Gettysburg, November 1863, he told the audience that our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. He dated the founding of the nation from the Declaration of Independence because it held certain truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're empowered by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. It was the belief in these ideals that led many to give their lives as they fought to end slavery in our nation. These same values have been leading us since. They led us through civil rights movement and will still lead us if we will study and rely on them. These founding documents were designed to bring checks and balances in our governance and to ensure protection over our freedom as we learn to develop as a nation. We need only look back through history to see this effect unfold as men and women of all ethnic backgrounds have risen into prominence and leadership. Now, equity sounds like equality and seems to infer that all of us are created equal. It appears to be as American as it could be, but DEI's inversion of the meaning of words means that Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech would be considered an assault on diversity because his dream was that his children and all of our children would not be judged on the basis of the color of their skin, but on the basis of their character. King's insistence on colorblind equality or meritocracy, that is his insistence that we live up to the Declaration's promise of equality, would make him persona non grata in today's DEI world. I believe he would be deeply grieved to see the chaos and victim mentality that some call progress today. Let's return to the healthy roots of our nation and teach our kids about the principles that this country was built upon. Let's encourage them to love and protect each other and to stand up for the foundational freedoms of America. Our nation is worth saving, and so are our children.
Heather Vion.
My name is Heather Vian, and I am a mother, and I live in the Vancouver School District. I care very much about this district as my children used to attend in this district, and so do several of their friends. I feel like I wore the wrong color. I should have wore red tonight. But I loved hearing the heart of the board that you don't really want to cut anyone's job in here. And that is very good news to me. But I realize the reality is that you need to make the budget work. I urge you and echo many of the statements that have come before me that there are great needs in our school district right now. And we are on bare bones staff. This is a picture of the pyramid training model that most educators are trained in our state. And on the base is the workforce, and on the top are the kids that do not easily get, like, here's the nurturing and responsive relationships, and looking at the classroom environment, and then looking at social supports such as visual aids. And then there are kids that need more one-on-one. But in reality, this is really what's happening in our classrooms. We have little staff and high needs. I beg to differ that we should use a different model and a different system than the pyramid model system for training. It's been echoed in this room that we all know that relationships are where it's at. If we connect with the students, if we connect with the staff, if we build relationship, then we have something powerful. And there is a training system out there called trust-based relational interventions. It is based on scientific evidence and neuroscience. And it also comes to that conclusion that all of this behavior that we're experiencing in the classroom is a cry for help from our kids. Every form of behavior is a form of communication. And I think most educators would agree on that fact. And that is part of what DEI is based on. It is very, it's great for parents, but it's also great for educators. And I advocate for this material, and I urge you to look into it. Thank you.
John Gerard.
Hi, my name's John Gerard, Royal Homes, 4501 Northeast Minnehaha, Vancouver. Dr. Snell and the board, thank you for navigating choppy waters. It's tough. I'm in the housing business. Interest rates are high. It's tough too. And I think getting people to pull together is the answer. What I want to share with you is what we're doing just that. A couple of highlights. There'll be a groundbreaking at Hudson's Bay. I think it's April 30th on a new construction training building, and it's all donor based. Okay. And the good thing about this is actually what's happening currently with the students, not only at Hudson's Bay, but at Columbia River and at Skyview with their construction classes. I think the last week of March, there'll be 3 elementary schools with those schools with the toolboxes, if you remember those from last year at Washington Elementary. And late April, we're going to have at the, I think the construction yard down there on Lower Fruit Valley area will be hosting a shed building contest between the 3 schools. Just to share with you some accomplishments with the students at Hudson's Bay. 3 years ago, no kids went to state with Skills USA. 2 last year, 8 this year in plumbing, electrical, and framing. I want to just conclude here. We've had a job fair. Who's heard of Dozer Days? Right? Vancouver School District sent over 200 kids to Dozer Days to the job fair. We'll have a job fair in March. Well, they'll send about 60. And I'm going to host an event, which I'd like to invite the board members and Dr. Snell, whoever would like to attend. And what it's about is actually getting kids family wage jobs. I'm going to have an event at Royal Oaks. I'll have 15 employers there, 30 kids, which 9 will be from Vancouver School District. These are the top 30 kids in construction classes. I'll have top-notch employers with the right culture, career jobs. And the goal is to actually have 5 interviews per kid before school gets out. So they're actually working. And I would suggest I've been coming to board meetings. I've missed the last couple for different reasons, but you know, there's a lot of dissension. I'm coming in with something that's working, and I would suggest get our minds. I heard some good suggestions. If we can all work towards that, because I know what it's like to go through cycles in the home building industry. It's not fun. And what makes it worse is when you actually make it adversarial. just work together, come up with solutions, and you keep on ticking. And at the end of the day, let's get these kids productive. Thank you.
Thank you. Glenn Young.
I'm Glenn Young. I serve on the Clark County Council, but I'm not here in that capacity today. I'm here as a father of 5, 4 of which attend school at Vancouver Public Schools, and one of which attends Jason Lee, which we've heard of an event that's taken place there. That day my daughter came home from school and mentioned what had happened, and it was concerning to me without a doubt. I learned more detail here this evening. That's why I chose to speak this afternoon, that I was not aware of, that are even more concerning. There's a difference when a situation escalates out of control. It's different from when there's planned, executed activity. So this has been a very somber meeting this evening for me to attend. And first of all, I want to thank the board and thank Dr. Snell. I don't envy you at this point. This is a difficult time and tough decisions that lie ahead. And regardless of where you make those cuts, there are going to be children that suffer from it. So I do not envy, and I appreciate what you do here. I do want to build on John's message that the solution is working together. And I really do believe that community members, staff, administration, everybody coming together to work through and solve some of our many problems. As you do make those cuts, there's one thing, my children's education is very important to me. What they learn at school is very important to me. But the most important thing is that they come home safe at the end of the day. And so my request would be to take this incident, don't look at it as where did we fail? Who did this wrong? Who did that wrong? But to look at it and really pick it apart and learn from it. Take it as an example that we can take elsewhere so that we can, try to stop these kinds of incidents from happening again. The world is changing, unfortunately. Schools are changing. It's a challenge. And again, my utmost respect to you for tackling this issue. But please, when those cuts are being made, make sure safety is not something that is compromised, the safety of our kids. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Jean Taylor, and this is going to be our last public comment for tonight.
What I have to say is different and fairly personal. It addresses the equity and inclusivity curriculum. But I believe that I really would like to support what you're doing. I appreciate what I've heard here tonight. And I believe that it might be partly because of this curriculum that the enrollment is a little bit lower. If it were higher, that would probably help. So I'll launch in. Part of what motivates me to speak today is a deep concern for those who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or anything related. As someone who has struggled with same-sex attraction, I understand how it feels to be judged by those looking from the outside in. I know the anguish of having desires you didn't ask for and don't want. I want to acknowledge that there is more to the story than the prevailing dialogue allows, and definitely more than can be expressed in 3 minutes. But that is the other part of the reason I'm speaking today. Ultimately, we're talking about our children, about each child's present and future story, if you will. So I question, consider the suffering in LGBTQ life, why is it that the DEI curriculum encourages this for our children? Are there youths who realize
that they made a hasty or wrong decision, to be scapegoats in the effort to make our society gay and friendly? What if the child or grandchild who ends up with this kind of story is mine or yours? Why are we encouraging them to take steps that could render them sterile, unable to change anything but their minds? The highlight of my story is an encounter with God that gloriously freed me from the belief that I was made that way, quote. And one instant I went from being marked by same-sex attraction to being marked as a woman loved by God and in His image at peace with God, with unity with herself. This encounter was precipitated by a friend who told me point blank that I was not made that way. Had she instead affirmed my identity as a lesbian, I might still be living in the misery and anguish I spoke of earlier. That is why I cannot in good conscience affirm anyone into misery and bondage instead of the beautiful freedom there for the choosing. In that context, I add my voice to those urging that the DEI curriculum be optional, that programs like trust-based relational intervention that was mentioned just a little bit ago, so effective in connecting with children, be seriously considered.
Thank you. That is it for our public comment. Thank you, everyone who shared tonight. We are moving into our business portion of the agenda. Most of these items were reviewed at the January Committee of the Whole meeting. I will start with the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, let's take it to a vote. And just for clarification, this is minutes for January 9th, 24, regular board meeting, and then the study session on the 23rd. Director Zavala?
Approve.
Director Smith?
Approve.
Director Barrows?
Approve.
And Director Decker?
Approve.
And I also approve. So our next item is our consent agenda as referenced earlier. These are there's several items on this agenda, both fiscal support services and it is instructional and administrative services. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
This is Kathy. I move. Sorry.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, perfect. We'll take it to a vote. Director Barrows?
Approve.
Director Smith?
Approve.
Director Zavala?
Approve.
And Director Decker?
Approve.
And I also approve. So next on our agenda is our regular business, instructional and administrative support services. There are a handful of policies. Taylor, if you would start with our second readings, those that we are taking action on tonight.
This was a problem last time. All right. So there's three policies for second reading. Policy 2090, program evaluation. The revisions to this policy are proposed by WASDA and remove outdated references to former OSPI assessment programs. Policy 3231, student records. The revisions to this policy are also proposed by WASDA and remove language about student fines, fees, and the withholding of diplomas. That information is addressed in policy 3520, which is the third policy up for second reading. Policy 3520, student fines, fees, and charges. This policy is revised to limit the school district's authority to withhold a student's high school diploma because of lost or damaged property, and that's based on amendments to RCW 28A.635.060. Those are the three policies up for second reading in your consideration.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second? We can do individual policies. So we do it all at once, but yes.
I'll make the motion to,
So the first one is policy 2090. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. So we'll take it to a vote, or unless there's any comments or questions. Okay, again, these policies are reviewed multiple months, and in our committee of the whole. Director Zavala?
Approve.
Director Smith?
Approve.
Director Barrows?
Approve.
And Director Decker?
Approve.
And I also approve. Second policy is the policy 3231. Do you have a motion?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Okay, take it to vote unless there's any comments or questions. Okay. Director Barrows,
Approve.
Director Smith,
Approve.
Director Zavala,
Approve.
Director Decker,
Approve.
and I also approve. And then we have policy 3520.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any comments or questions on this policy? Okay, we'll take it to a vote. Director Barrows,
Approve.
Director Smith,
Approve.
Director Zavala,
Approve.
Director Decker,
Approve.
and I also approve. So those three policies are approved. And then we have a few first readings, Taylor. Thank you.
Yeah, we also have three policies for first reading. Policy 1400, meeting conduct, order of business. The revisions to this policy are based on updates to RCW 42.30.035, which requires that by no later than June 30th of this year, school districts make and retain audio recordings of our regular and special board meetings. Policy 2220, school calendar. The revisions to this policy are to clarify that the minimum instructional day requirement under RCW 28A.150.220 may be subject to waiver by OSPI through WAC Chapter 180-18. And the final policy for first reading, policy 6605, student safety, walking, biking, and riding buses to school. The revisions to this policy are proposed by WASDA and reflect that with the repeal of WAC 392-151-017, the school district is no longer required to have a safety advisory committee.
Are there any questions or comments about these policies? Otherwise, they will come back to next month for action.
I was just gonna say, these seem all pretty straightforward, and luckily we're already meeting the requirements of the policy with recorded videos or recorded board meetings.
Yes. Next on our agenda is an informational item. It is the proposed school district calendar for 24-25, including board meetings. This is published for the public to see. We know that that's always an item of interest, and the board will be taking action on this next month. Last on our agenda is resolution number 912. Dr. Snell, do you want to give us a little background on this?
This is what I referenced in our budget presentation today, that this resolution is for your consideration tonight, that if you approve it, it directs me to work with the district to develop a reduction plan that meets the target that you set for us back in December of 8 to 10%. If approved tonight, then I would bring that plan for consideration on March 12th at that regular board meeting. That plan would be posted with information the Thursday before as our general practice for the meeting information beforehand.
Thank you. Do I have a motion on this resolution?
I move.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from the board? I think we addressed a lot of the budget concerns earlier, but specifically to this resolution, is there any further thoughts? I think as referenced from all of us earlier, this is not necessarily the work that we join the school board to do, and this is it's heavy work for all of us on the board and the administrative staff. So we thank the team that is helping us work through this and collect feedback. and also just help us do this process as transparently and with dignity to the process and our staff. Anything else?
Need to vote.
Okay. Director Decker, did you have anything?
Do we need to vote?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
just getting, thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Director Zavala,
Approve?
Director Smith,
Approve.
Director Barrows,
Approve.
and Director Decker.
Approve.
And I also approve, motion passes. Last on our agenda is our Board of Directors report. We've had a very busy month. We spoke to the legislative conference, the WASDA Legislative Conference. I was going to ask Director Barrows to start. We had an exciting visitor on Friday.
Yes, so as you may have seen, that I know it was reported in the Columbian, the governor came to VPS last week. He came to visit Ogden, specifically to talk about special education. And I have kind of referenced when your superintendent offers you the opportunity as a school psychologist, but also a board member, to talk to the governor about special education, you readily accept that. And so I was very excited at the opportunity. We got to visit some classrooms, but also kind of engaged in a panel discussion, specifically not just about special education, but specifically around our paraeducators. Specifically, our governor is wanting to advocate for pay increases for our paraeducators. $3 an hour is kind of what he said. And so we had a great conversation around the incredible work that our paraeducators do in our district, the supports that they offer our students. Several of our paraeducators shared about kind of their experiences. There was a special education teacher, a school counselor that kind of have shared their experiences. I was able to reiterate the fact that I see the work that our paraeducators do, the increased needs that our students have, some of the initiatives that we have around more inclusive opportunities, which encompasses more staffing to be able to do that. But as kind of the theme of the night, the big question is the funding. I wholeheartedly agree that our paras deserve more pay and do incredible work that is valued, but the significant concern that I have is where that funding is going to come from when we are faced with budget cuts. And so I was able to ask that and just emphasize that we do need that funding from the state in order to implement this that he has. So it was a great conversation and a great opportunity to kind of advocate. And what he had also emphasized too is the importance of us advocating to our legislators on some of the initiatives that will have funding for our schools tied to it. So yeah, it was a great visit, a great opportunity. And I loved getting to visit the classrooms. And also there were some student ambassadors that basically led the tour around the school, which was great to see. All of the adults, we kind of just followed as the students were leading him around. So it was a great experience. And I'm glad that our governor got to come and visit our schools.
I also had the opportunity to participate, tag along, so to speak. I was really proud of the advocacy, because a lot of the challenges we're facing here really come from Olympia, and our staff spoke so passionately about the work that they do and about the needs they have and the importance of the relationships they build with their students. Our teachers hosted quite a big group in classrooms, and we were able to showcase our early childhood education programs, a couple different classrooms. The governor was presented with birthday cards by students, which I thought was really fun. And the first lady was also in attendance, and I felt like she actually was making some connections with our staff and our advocates. Lastly, I was really thankful that we included parent advocates, so parents of special ed students that I think really spoke to the experience and what made their students successful in our system. So great advocacy, I think, all around, and I think we were heard. Hopefully, the funds do come in the next couple of years. Lastly, I wasn't sure, Director Zavala, if you wanted to talk about where you were last week.
Leadership WASDA, is that?
Yes.
Okay. I've been kind of a busy bee, these past few weeks. I've been in Olympia twice now. So part of being on the board, if you've been on the board for more than 2 years, you're able to apply to be part of Leadership WASDA. So kind of honing in on more of your leadership skills. So both Director Sproul and I are part of the cohort. And it just started last week. And so we also got to visit the Hill again, and got to listen to Representative Berg kind of give us her ear and have more of a personal conversation around our education system. And I think really my takeaway in all that is happening everywhere is just statewide, we're all hurting. This is not just an us problem, it's a everywhere problem. And I think the legislators are hearing that we need to revamp our educational system. They don't know how that will look. They don't have answers, but I think they all know that it's not working anymore. I think something that we've talked about is not saying fully funding, but amply funding, because fully funding looks very different for every district. So we get to be part of Leadership WASDA with different directors across the state. So I think it's very, I feel like I'm on a big learning curve this year. So getting to know a lot of directors and really hearing how we're all working for the same thing is really for our students. I think that's it.
I would just add that I think the opportunity to connect and over the course of this 12 months, have a shared learning experience with directors from different districts. As much as the classroom learning, it was the breaks and just the conversation about how districts were approaching the same challenges, and that's always insightful and beneficial to our work. So grateful to be part of it. Anyone else have anything they'd like to report on? Director Decker?
No, I've pretty much been quarantining, so not any update. Hopefully next month I'll have some things to add to.
Well, thank you for participating while you're under the weather. With that, our meeting is adjourned. Next month, or our next meeting will be our committee of the whole next week, and then last will be our study session on the 27th.
Just a reminder, we'll have that musical performance going too, the end of the meeting one.